Hey everybody, Peter Zeihan here coming to you from Seattle. It is late October, and this is one of those that can store, so you probably won't see it till November, but whatever. The topic I want to discuss today is strikes in Hollywood, of all places. We've got two separate strikes going on, one of which has at least temporarily been resolved, one involving the writers, which for the moment is behind us, they've settled, and one involving the actors. And the issue is honestly one of technology. With the advent of a sufficient processing power to allow streaming services over internet connections, we now have a number of major providers such as Hulu or Apple or Amazon or Netflix that are not just providing legacy shows, but new shows and transmitting them to their end users and consumers through a completely different network that doesn't use the normal TV radio approach, VHF, things like that. This means different models. It used to be that all the income came pretty much from advertising, and now there are different ways to do it with, say, a per-month subscription charge. You're going to see more and more and more in this going forward, so we have to split it in those two factions. So first, the labor that deals with the screenwriting, and then the labor that deals with the acting. So screenwriters. This is going to be an ongoing issue, largely because of the revenue play. When screenwriters used to produce things, whether it was for television or movies before, they'd work directly with the movie house, which would generate their income from either advertising or ticket sales. Now that you've got streaming, the question is what constitutes readership or viewership, because it's not the same model. And is it something that's a once and done? Is it something that gives them income over time? Because unless you're an A-lister where you can demand whatever terms you want, everyone else has to kind of suffer through. And for the writing, the rise of AI is providing more and more support for people who are particularly creative and leaving everyone else by the curb. But as problematic as that is from the point of view of the writers, it's a disaster for the actors. We already have technology that allows us to fill in the background with either a complete green screen generated system or even to a certain degree extras. And I think the two movies that have demonstrated how this technology is coming along the best, one is Ant-Man 2, the one where we had some characters who in today's world are in their 60s, but we had a couple of scenes where they were shown when they were in their 20s and their 30s, and you can use the technology to just make people look younger. We've also had World War Z, which is a hot mess. Great book, horrible movie. But when you had the swarms of zombies, those weren't real zombies. They were all CGI generated. And we could see how they looked very, very real. Well, you play both of those movies forward because those are both 5 years old now. And we're getting to the point where you can film an extra from a number of different angles and insert them into the background just fine. And so part of the reason that the actors were striking is because they were being asked to sign documents to basically surrender their future digital rights. So you're an extra in this movie, you're filmed, and then they reserve the right to recreate you royalty-free in the future. And obviously, if you're a low-ranking actor or an extra or an aspiring actor, that pretty much ends your career. It won't really hurt the A-listers, but pretty much everybody else would be left in the cold. And very soon, we're going to be able to take footage from people who are dead and use AI technologies to put them into leading roles if we want to. And so the balance, the ability for you to profit off your skill set and your presence all of a sudden isn't there anymore. And it's a question of who generates the revenue. And at the moment, the law suggests it's the people who control the AI-driven software and actually design the movies in the first place. So from a writer's point of view, this is going to get a little bit stickier as we move forward, but it's going to be more of an evolutionary process. But for the actors, you're actually looking at the evisceration of an entire class of people. And that will take with it the way movies are produced. Because if you can just have a handful of A-listers and B-listers who are doing kind of a number of the main roles and have the star power to draw people, and everything else is computer generated and looks as real as the real thing, then we're in a fundamentally different model for everything. And we're probably going to be in that environment by the end of this decade. So one way or another, Tinseltown is going to look very, very, very different. And it's probably going to have a lot fewer people. Hey everybody, Peter Zeihan here coming to you from above Denver, and today's topic is the Panama Canal and its impact on trade now that it's largely shut down, partially shut down. But before we get to the bad news, let's cover some good news. I do have good news from time to time. We have had another matching sponsor come in, adding another $10,000 to the match. So if you would like to donate to MedShare, which is a charity that provides medical assistance to communities who cannot look after themselves for reasons that are not their fault, specifically the Ukraine Fund, where the Russians have started bombing the power grid and attempt to kill as many civilians over the winter as possible, now's the time. Because the first $90,000 that is donated to the link and the QR code that we're attaching to this and all of our videos for the foreseeable future are going to be doubled for the month of November. So up to $90,000. I mean, basically you're doubling your money. That's a better financial proposition than Bitcoin, in my opinion, but bygones. Anyway, now is the time, so please be generous. We're doing everything we can. The money is rolling in. It's looking very positive, but every little bit helps. Okay, with that behind us now, let's talk about Panama. It hasn't rained really in Panama in several months. They are in the middle of the most intense El Nino on record. And unlike most canals that, go up and over and therefore have on continental lands and so have lots and lots of water to draw from, Panama is going from ocean to ocean, sea level to sea level, and it has to go up a few hundred feet, and which means that aside from the first and the last lock, which touch the ocean, everything else is water that comes from the sky. And it is an isthmus, and so there's not a very large water catchment issue. And that catchment issue also has to supply all of the water for the city of Panama, which is about home to 3/4 of the population of the country. So you get a prolonged drought event like they're in the middle of, and things are bad. If anything, it's worse than it sounds, because we're supposed to be in the middle of the wet season right now. The dry season starts in about 6 to 8 weeks, and so they know that this is going to get worse before it gets better, and they're probably going to have to wait till the next wet season, which isn't going to start until the beginning of next summer. In the meantime, the number of ships transiting the canal has already dropped by over a quarter, and of the ones that are still going through, they've had to reduce their draft by about a quarter, which means that the amount of weight that they can carry is reduced by about 40%. So the bigger ships aren't going in at all, the smaller ships are carrying less, and it adds up to very, very roughly-ish a 50% reduction in the throughput capacity of the canal. Now, for the United States, this is kind of a big deal. This is the piece of international infrastructure that we use by far the most, even more than that big bridge over the Great Lakes going to Canada. About 6% of global trade transits the canal. Most of that trade is from the United States, very heavy in the commodities space, energy and especially foodstuffs, going from the Mississippi and the East Coast into Panama and then across the Pacific. The alternate route is a few thousand miles longer. It crosses the Atlantic into the Mediterranean through Suez, around India, and then up to East Asia. Much more expensive route. Takes a couple weeks extra. It's not the best solution, even once you consider the extra cost. Keep in mind that really all it takes is one Filipino crew on a container ship throwing a party at the wrong time in the middle of the canal, and the ship can get stuck. And then that shuts down too. There's not a lot that anyone can do here. Building up the alternative infrastructure to ensure a backup water supply would require a few $billion and several years, and you would still have to wait for it to rain to fill up those reserve reservoirs. So really all we can do here is wait. About the only thing that I could suggest, and this is something that I think it's high time we do anyway, is for the United States to massively expand its production footprint in the processing of the raw commodities that it exports. Not only would you then have a much denser value ratio to weight and bulk for the things that you export, but there'd be a lot more economic activity generated within the continental United States as well before you even get to the export component. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. That's all I got for today. Everyone take care.